Welcome back to our study on the book of Romans. This is the Sonship Review, part 6, and this is session 1. So we're moving into these next verses. And so as we do, let me kind of set up how Romans chapter 8 is broken down. So, I got to put in a different PowerPoint. You're going to have to give me a second. Sorry. Right. Come on. Oh, there it is. Okay. And there it is. Wow. Okay, I forgot I was changing PowerPoints. Okay. So let me get this outline up here for you, okay? Number 1, our sonship establishment is made up of 4 parts, or there's 4 sections as you go through the scriptures. You should have this in your notes, so let me just walk you through it. First of all, the patient endurance of the suffering of this present time. That's what we saw in verses 16 to 25, yeah. And then the second one was the issue on prayer. That's verses 26 and 27, and that was the untroubled confidence in prayer. The third one is unwavering trust in my Father and His curriculum. That'll be in chapter 8, verses 28 to 39. That's all of chapter 8. And then the last part is understanding the dispensational change, and that's Romans 9 through 11. Those 4 issues solve 4 potential problems for an adopted son or daughter, and here they are. Number 1, that first one solves the sufferings of this present time, and you know what those are. We don't need to go back over that. The second section solves the problem of our ignorance in prayer. We know not what we should pray for as we ought. The third one, which the one that we're starting now, is going to deal with the sufferings of Christ and the problems that come from that. And the fourth one is going to make sure that we don't get taken in by the lure of Israel's program. I could have put some other things in there because there's a lot of things that Romans 9, 10, and 11 deal with, but I just chose one, and so there it is. But we'll mention the others as we work through that section. This third section in Romans chapter 8 is going to produce an unwavering trust in 2 things. In what our Heavenly Father says to us is absolutely true and can be believed and trusted. And number 2, in His Word, specifically in the fact that it will accomplish in our inner man exactly what it was designed to do. This third section, which is Romans chapter 8, verses 28 to 39, is broken down. I'm going to break this down into parts. And I'm not going to give you all the parts. I'm just going to give you this first one here. And part 1 under that is going to be verses 28 to 30. And we're going to look at those verses and see some things about that. We're going to talk about some things that we haven't talked about before. So let's read it now that we've gotten to there. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. For whom He did foreknow, He also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom He did predestinate, them He also called, and whom He called, them He also justified, and whom He justified, them He also glorified. Now, what we're after, remember in the review, is that we're going to get the doctrine that's going to work as armor when we get back over to Romans chapter 13 and cast off the works of darkness. I spent some time, I'll just remind you of it, I spent some time saying that this idea, the way verse 28 is meant to read for most folks, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. When they say all things work together for good, what most people think that means is, don't worry, because you love God, everything is going to work out okay. It may not look like it right now, but at the end, there'll be this real twist that God is going to put everything, and you'll find out all of that was really good after all. And people wind up talking that way. And they go, you know, this thing was happening to me, and I don't know why God had me go through that, but I tell you that at the end of that, this or this happened, and you know what? I really see now why God had me go through that. I'm really glad He did that. But all they're doing is looking at a circumstance now and trying to put that positive spin on it. That's not what this verse is talking about at all. What it is talking about is that all the things that happen to us, and I'm going to give this to you in just a moment on the PowerPoint, but all the things that are happening to us are able to work to produce something in our inner man. That's the good thing that's being produced in us. Not, God is going to change the situation, so don't worry, everything is going to work out okay. That's not what it is. So here, take a look at this. Every experience, every situation, and every circumstance, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or neither good nor bad, every one of those that we go through is meant to be utilized toward the attainment of one goal, and that is the furthering of our edification. That is to produce godly thinking, godly living, and equip us for godly labor. Every circumstance. All right, now, do you know what that means? When I say that everything that happens to us. Now, right here at the beginning, you won't be able to look at every single thing in your life and identify how it works, but you will. But in the beginning, you will be able to see some things and understand how those things that you're going through can actually be part of your education that is going to produce godliness in you. And if I'm right when I say that, if I'm right when I say everything we go through is meant to further our edification unto godliness, what does that mean to us? What should that mean to us? What should we be thinking if we've got this idea in our head?
It gives us an internal peace.
Okay, that gives you a peace that no matter what things are going on here.
Confidence that it's going to work.
All right, so let's put them up.
Mom used to say, everything happens for a reason. We may not understand why, but like you were saying, it all works towards good. Well, now with Sonship and everything, she's still using that same thing, but she's going, everything happens for a reason to edify.
That's it. Everything is happening for your edification. That is right. That's right. That's a good way. That is excellent. Okay, so now, if you're thinking about that, what else would you be thinking? If everything that's happening, look, you understand that from the time you get up in the morning, everything that is happening really ought to be looked at from the standpoint that there is, even if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, or if it's neither good nor bad, it just is a thing.
It's fine-tuning your wisdom.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, that's very good. Okay. All of those things are opportunities. All of those things. And here's the thing. If we don't see them this way, we not only miss out on peace, we are missing out on opportunities. Now, I don't want to spend any more time on this because I just needed to get you thinking about it this way. But we're missing opportunities to be edified unto godliness. And we're missing opportunities for us to be transformed, because this is a chance to put the doctrine to work and transform us. We're missing opportunities to put the doctrine to work. And if we're missing opportunities to put the doctrine to work, we're missing opportunities to get more skilled in the doctrine. So all of this is, you know what? Here's a chance, because here's what you're going to find out. There is nothing that will ever take place in your life that eventually you will not see through the lens of your sonship. Yes, I mean, and there will never be a thing that happens when you'll say, well, this is no opportunity for me to put the doctrine to work. Everything will be an opportunity.
So it helps in your understanding.
But especially, I'm not talking about everything will be a good thing to have happen to you, but it will be an opportunity for you to put the doctrine to work. Let me take what you're asking me. Let's suppose that a situation came along and you know what? You reacted to it totally wrong. How is that an opportunity? Absolutely. To see what happened that got you into that place and now do what? Understand that, huh? Yeah, here's a chance to go to work on that.
But isn't that even without godliness, isn't that something that you should happen to you anyway? I mean, even
without sonship, as a normal.
Oh, as a normal person, you would say, oh, the things that I did that I shouldn't have done.
we can learn from what we do wrong.
Right, right. But see, here's what I'm saying. A normal person would look at that and go, oh, you know what? Here's an area of my life I just need to work on. For a son or daughter, you should be looking at that and saying, this is not just, it is an area to work on, but you're more specific. This is an area of the doctrine that is not working in me, and because what is a lost person going to do to make themselves better? It's all going to come out of human reasoning, right? Ours is going to come out of the doctrine that's in the Word, because that's the thing that transforms us. This is not us turning over a new leaf. This is being transformed by the Word. You see? So if it was a bad thing, you have an opportunity now to see that here's an opportunity for me to put the doctrine to work, to make me more like the son or daughter that I'm supposed to be. What if it's a good thing? What if it's not a problem? What if it's a good thing?
There's still an opportunity.
Yeah. Doesn't your Father's wisdom work in every situation?
Right?
Sure. Sure. Did you have a question?
It would be, instead of human reasoning, it should be our intelligent understanding.
Yeah. Instead of human reasoning, it would be our intelligent understanding. And that understanding comes right out of the Word, right out of the doctrine that was given to us. And so the only way to make that happen, is to stop and think about everything that you're going through. And you have to do this on purpose in the beginning. Is to stop and think about what I'm going through. How am I responding to this? What's happening? What am I supposed to be doing here? Most of the things that happen to us, by the way, let me just say it like this. When you get to the creature, it is not like written in your Bible is a list of things for you to do. When you get to the creature, knowing the things that you know, you should be able to look at it and go, this is what needs to be done. When we go to the doctor and look, and you say, my back hurts, he doesn't know what's going on. So he may ask you some questions, right? But it's out of what he's already learned that he knows what to look at or how to, well, I was going to say how to find out, but I got Milt telling me he's got a doctor that don't know what's going on. So I'm just, but okay, here's the way it's supposed to work, right? Here's the way it's supposed to work. That he's going to say, well, have you slipped and fallen lately? Did you lift something heavy? And depending on what you say, you know what, they may take an x-ray or they may do some other test, or he may put his hand there and go, is it sore here? You've all laid on the table and he pushes, he goes, is this sore? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? Look, he just knows there's things that you do that go through that tell you something. And the things that we learn as sons and daughters, those are the things that will tell us when we're up in the creature, these are the things that need to be done. And we know out of that. All right, so what I'm going to say is there are things that happen to us. We're talking about this thing on the board here. Some things are out of our control. You don't, look, if it's going to rain, what can you do about it? Nothing, absolutely nothing. And some things happen because we did something to make them happen. If I go over to Bob and Norma's one day and Bob's in a wheelchair with his leg in a cast and his arms wrapped up with cast and got sticks poked down, he's like this, and I go, Bob, What happened? And if he starts his explanation with, well, I was up on the roof trying to turn the antenna. Well, you know what? That wasn't really out of his control. That was because of something he did, right? I'm using that ridiculous... Okay, I'm not repeating that because that's just not right. But, look, haven't we all done things and we go, all right, why did I do that? Okay. So some things are out of our control, some things are in our control, but godly wisdom is not about, look, if godly wisdom, do you have to have godly wisdom for Bob to know don't try to get up on the roof and turn the antenna? No. No. Okay, I'm not repeating that one either. Okay, so here's the thing. You don't need godly wisdom for that. Godly wisdom, you should already know those kinds of things. That's horse sense. Okay. No disrespect to the horses intended there. Okay. But we have a wisdom that is being given to us so that in all of these opportunities, the skills that we are learning as sons, wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, one of those 4 skills is going to be honed by this experience. Okay? And you have to start looking at it that way. I could illustrate every one of those for you, but I think you already get the idea. So what's happening is all things, everything, is working together for good. Not the physical good of you're going to get rich or have a lot of stuff, but the good of what God is working in you. All those things are working for good. Every situation and circumstances, good, bad, or not, is working for good to a certain group of people. People read this verse like this is happening for everybody. And I'm going to tell you, it is not. Because some people don't even know what the verse is saying. It can't work for them if they don't even know what it is about. But let's read the rest of the verse now. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. Now look, if I was to ask, how many of you love God? Everybody would say, everybody in this room would say, I certainly love God. Okay. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. I'm just covering my bases here. No, okay. Boy, there's Bertha. You can tell she's had kids, hadn't she? All right. So here's my question. Srita, do you love God? Would you tell me why? Okay. All right. That's a pretty good one to be thankful for, isn't it? Does anybody else love God for that reason? Okay. Has anybody got a different answer? I'm not trying to put everybody on the spot. Put Sarita on the spot. Oh. We love Him because He has made us His sons. All right, now she's going to go over to 1 John, which is okay. But she's going to go over to 1 John. We love Him because He first loved us. Okay. Okay. Now, I could put this list down, but we're already far enough along that everybody's getting the idea. Because here's what Romans says. Don't lose track of where we are. And we know that all things work together for good. To them that love God, he is not talking about, do I have a warm, fuzzy feeling when I think about God? That's not what he's talking about. And he is not talking about just loving God in general. He is talking about loving God in a very particular way. Because, remember Ms. Browning's poem, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." You know what the whole idea is? There's a lot of different reasons. Now, I was doing a little experiment at the house the other day, and, well, this has been a month ago now, I guess. Anyway, Mark is standing in there, and I go, "Do you love God?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, first thing he said, "Well, gosh, there's a lot of reasons." And I thought, okay, stop, because you already got it right. Just stop. I'm not saying if you didn't say for a lot of reasons you weren't giving me a right reason. I asked you why, you gave me several things. All of those are legit. But what I'm saying is, when he says all things work together for good to them that love God, he is not talking about just for anybody who is grateful that he sent his son to die on the cross. That's not what he's talking about. And he's not talking about, loving God because, and then think of some physical circumstance, that happened, because we know that's not it. Huh?
I said he gave his life for us.
Well, he did. He gave his life for us. He did. And we do love him for that. But when he says, for them who love God, what you haven't been told yet, I guess I should say it to you this way. He is telling you something that you're about to learn, but you don't yet know. In other words, if you say, well, if all things work together to them that love God, and it's not because they love him because they got saved, or because he first loved us, or because he made us sons, I mean, those are fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and you should. But he is talking about loving him in a way different from that, a way you haven't yet been taught to love him. Because here's the thing about godly love. You do have to be taught it. So I'm going to say this about it. No one in this world has ever produced godly love as a natural part of what they do or how they feel. That doesn't happen in a fallen man automatically, and you don't magically get it when you get saved. You have to be taught about it. You can no more automatically know godly love and charity than you can be born into the world and know algebra. Actually, it's harder than knowing algebra because you don't have the capacity for it. And with algebra, you just don't have enough maturity and advancement of your brain. That's not the issue with this. This is something that, until you come to Christ, you don't even have the capacity to do this. It's impossible for you to do it. And so what he's going to say is, all things do work together for good, but it is to those who, and I'm not saying if you don't love him this way, God's working everything bad for you. What I'm saying is, until you love God in this particular way, all those things cannot produce in you what he wants them to produce in you. That good can't be produced through all the circumstances of your life. Yeah? Does everybody understand what I'm saying with that? I feel like I'm saying it, but I'm not saying it exactly the way that you're comprehending it. Don't look at this as though God is saying, okay, if you don't love me in this particular way, then I'm going to do something bad. That's not what he's saying. Paul is only saying here, the ability for all of these circumstances of life to work together for good is all resting on you learning to love God in a very particular way. And if you don't love Him for this, you're going to be taught about it. No, it's not that. But He's going to say, if you don't love Him for that, oh, look, it's like this. Someone said, let me see if I have a hard example here. Let's do, well, that's what I'm saying. I haven't said it. And I haven't said it because it's not sitting here. All He's doing is telling you about it before He's teaching you about it. In other words, it's like me saying, next week, we're going to cover this. That's all that is to them that love God. That's the way He's doing it. Because when, and by the way, you just haven't seen it this way because I didn't teach it to you this way. Where did you learn to love God in this way? You did. Before we went back to the review, where in your Bible were we taught this? Romans chapter 12, verses 3 through, I can't remember how far that section went. Remember when we covered godly wisdom? And to teach us godly wisdom, remember He didn't use the word wisdom. He talked about the components of godly love, didn't He? And we learned names for them. This is very dangerous here. We learned names for them because a man ought not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Yeah, and we talked about, remember we listed them off. We talked about selflessness, and we talked about all those attributes of godly love. Not until those things in that first section in Romans 12 are truly in you, are you able to love God that way. That's where they come from. So if you want to know what they are, that's what they are. Now, He's not giving it to us until He finishes giving us establishment. But He is telling you about it. He is saying that, do you want all of these things in your life to really work together for good? Then I have to produce something in you. I have to produce the attributes of my love in you. And once that's in you, you won't have to work at that. That is what will happen. But it only happens for the people that godly love has been installed in them. Are you seeing what I'm saying there? So, He is talking about loving God with the love that has been established in us. It's the love of our Father Himself. Let me give you this illustration. When Paul says, remove this thorn from me, and finally God says, my grace is sufficient for thee. If I say, hey Paul, does it occur to you that you ought to love God because the way He has chosen to help you out here in this situation is by giving you His grace? We just don't think of it that way, do we? We don't think, I love God. See, we can think of things, I love Him because He saved me. That's a good one. I love Him because He made us sons. Absolutely. I love Him because He first loved us. But do you love Him because He doesn't take away your pneumonia, but instead He gives you grace? And if you do love Him for that, when is the last time you mentioned it to Him? I'm not putting us on the spot. I'm not trying to put you on a guilt trip here. I'm just saying, because when you, I guess, look, I could, yeah.
Could you say, like, to them that love God, it would actually be that to them that are full of God's love, just like we learned about God's thinking, it's God's wisdom, it's God's love. Once you would have that full That's when.
All things work together for good. Yes, that's exactly right. In other words, that all things working together for good is a byproduct of having this kind of love in you. We can't manufacture that. And you know what? If I don't teach this to you right here, and I know I didn't say it to you this way the first time through, we will constantly be looking at our situations, and all we'll be doing is trying to put a spin on them to make them match up with something good for us, rather than us really having installed in us the love that we're supposed to have. And here's what's going to happen. Once that happens, you won't have to do anything. All of those situations will work together for good. That's why it's predicated on to them that love God. Now I want to illustrate this with a couple of things. One of those is, I'm going to tell you a story.
Sorry, can you break it up and say God's teaching and our proper response to be God's love?
When He teaches us about godly love from verses 3 to, I'm sorry, I can't remember what that is. Let's say verse, 14 or something down there. And we respond to, as that love is truly built in us, that becomes true. There's nothing else to do. Yeah.
Does that relationship interact?
It is. And this is why we're not through with prayer yet. Because what I have to do is show you how we take that thing of prayer we just came out of to move into this verse, and how that's going to continue to work in this, because it is connected. And that's something else I never talked to you about before, but it's very important. So I know the deal went off, but I need to finish this point. So let me do it this way by telling you a story. Now usually when I tell you a story, I'm telling you about something I goofed up and got wrong. And I know you love that. But this time I'm going to tell you the story about my wife. And okay. So here's the thing. And I'm only saying it to illustrate what I'm talking about here. I never ever remember a day when all through the day that she doesn't come and tell me how much she loves me. She thanks me for things that I never even think about being thanked for. We could be at the Walmart in Fort Stockton getting groceries, and we just stop somewhere to eat and come back, and she'll say, "Thank you for taking me to eat." She just doesn't take it for granted. Now, if she didn't say it, would I know? Yeah. But you know what? Here's what, when you have kids, don't you tell them all the time how much you care about them? I mean, before they become teenagers and you wish, you could just lock them away somewhere for the next 8 years. I mean, do you not say that? I mean, you do. My point is, and sometimes, all right, let's do the role play, because this is really the way it goes. A wife will, she'll sit there and she'll kind of have this look on her face, and her husband will come in, and he knows the look, and he doesn't know why the look, but he knows the look, and he'll look at it and he'll go, "What's wrong?" And she'll go, "Nothing." And he'll go, No, really, tell me what's wrong." And she'll go, "Nothing." He goes, "Honey, I know something's wrong. Tell me what's wrong." And she'll go, "Do you love me?" And he said, "Well, yeah." "Well, why don't you ever tell me?" "Well, I do love you." "Well, it doesn't count if I have to tell you to tell me." And you know I'm right. And then he'll go, "Well, you know I love you. I do the weed eating, don't I?" Because in his mind, that's how that works. But in her mind, what does she want? She didn't want him to, she does want him to do the weed eating. What does she want to do? She wants to hear it, doesn't she? She wants to hear it. Now, I'm not saying your Heavenly Father is so needy that He needs to hear you just say it a certain way. But what really needs to happen in us is an honest assessment of understanding what He is doing in producing godly love in us, and saying that. In other words, Does anybody go, I'm just sick of it. Every day they tell me at the job how much they appreciate me. I'm getting tired of it. Thinking about quitting. You don't do that. And if someone says, I love you, you don't go, I just hate it when they tell me how much they care about me. I wish they hated me. Nobody does that.
Actions speak louder than words.
Okay, see, I knew we were going to get into the nuances of that, and I wrote that in red in my notes because I said I'm not going to get off in the weeds with actions speak louder than words. It is true, and he does the weed eating. That's why he thinks that. Okay, but my point is, don't you like to hear it? Of course you do. And here's what I'm going to say. When something, if you really like something, even if it's not something you love, if it's something you really like, you will even say that. If you buy some gadget and it really works better than you even thought it would, you know what you find yourself saying? I can hear Barbara saying to Milt, I really like this new chopper, or whatever she's got. Don't you say that kind of stuff? Yeah. And here's what, and I'm not saying your Heavenly Father's up there saying, oh, please, please, please just tell me how much you care about me. What He's waiting for is for us to understand the depth of what He has done, and as a natural expression of our understanding, we're looking at Him and saying, Father, I really do love you. That what you're giving me is grace. Because I really understand. Because if you were to say, so if you feel this way, don't come up and tell me. Because I don't want to know. But if you're really going, well, I don't love Him for His grace, because what I really like for Him to do is just solve my problem. You see, then you're not there. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to be able to say, I really do love Him. You know what you wish your kids would do when they were growing up? Instead of loving you because you let them have everything they want, what you would want to hope is that one day they will love you for doing the right thing by them, even when it didn't make you popular with them. You would hope that one day they would recognize what you were in their life. It does. And then they come back and they go, thank you, Mom, for being tough on us when we needed it.
Yeah, I have a true story about that when I was going to share.
Okay. So I'm saying, when you understand the depth, so I'm saying, how do we love the Lord? We love Him in a lot of different ways. And don't you want all things to work together for good? He's not saying, see, this is where people go, all y'all are doing is putting this goody spin on this thing like, well, it's a bad thing happening, but it's really something good that God's going to do. It's not a goody spin. Here's what it is. For those people that love God in this way, the way that you're going to be taught about, it's like here He's saying, would you like for all things to work together for good? Then I'm going to teach you about godly love, because that's the way that happens. You don't get to have the first part apart from the second part. It's a byproduct of the love. And when you have this love working in you, without any effort on your part, all things will work together for good.
And Mike, that's also when you can be rejoicing in all those.
And yes, that is right. That's when you do rejoice and take pleasure in infirmities and rejoice in tribulation. It's not, I'm just going to say I'm rejoicing in it when I'm really not.
Well, isn't that why the body is so important?
And the body it's critical to that.
If we get down, they can lift us back.
Exactly. The members of the body are going to they're going to get involved in that. And look, and I'm not saying if someone's going to listen to this tape and they're out living somewhere in the country and they're the only ones by themselves and they think it's tough. But look, you know what? This body is the best way to get this done. I'm not saying you can't get some truth out there, but it's hard when you're by yourself. It's harder. But my point is, I don't want us to swap the cart and the horse here. I don't want us to think that when we read this, we're just saying all things work together for good because, of course, I love the Lord. That's not what He's saying. So now what I have to do is I have to teach you, and we're not going to get all the way through these notes, but when we come back, I'm going to teach you about how prayer now becomes a part of this process of what we're talking about. And it's also going to tie in with what was back in that previous section back here when we're talking about verses 26 and 27, where he says, "And he that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit, for he maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of God." And you would ask yourself the question, because the Spirit's not searching the hearts. It says, "And he that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit." Well, who's searching our heart? Our Father. And you would almost say, well, why is he searching our heart? He's not searching his heart for his benefit. He's searching our heart for our benefit. And when we understand that process, that works right back into sonship prayer. Now, you may not have realized it, but with the things we talked about in prayer in the first session, and now that we've talked about here, you know what? It would be really good to integrate into your prayer life is to begin to think about the things your Heavenly Father is doing, and ask yourself the question, do I love Him for this? And talk to Him about that. Because I have to be honest, in my life, until I started looking at this, I never really thought about saying, if you'd have said, what do you love the Lord for? I would have said His grace. But when I'd have been thinking about His grace instead of something else that He could, that people think that He does. I just didn't think of it in that way. It made me think about this. And the issue of godly love being produced in us. Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop this here because this issue on prayer, I don't want to rush this. I don't want us to run off and leave it. Okay, listen. I just want to say this right here at the end. This is a bigger issue than we think. I had two questions in my mind for a long time. I didn't know how to answer them. And I'm sure the answers that I think I know now are going to get expanded. The further we go through the education, I'll learn even more about it. One of them was, if the first section that we're learning is wisdom, and remember we talked about it, when He's teaching you His wisdom, He's not teaching you a bunch of little truisms or proverbs that are wise. He taught us the components of godly love. Well, why? Why are we supposed to look at that as wisdom? And here was the second thing. Remember that third skill? Now, justice was easy. I saw that. So the wisdom was really the components of godly love and charity. And then you get to justice. Well, I saw that. That was the good and evil, right and wrong issue, that standard that God has. But when we got to judgment, remember what judgment was? It was the ability to decide between two or more possible things of which none of them are wrong. It wasn't an issue of what's right and what's wrong. You have two good options here, and they're both okay. So how do I know what God's doing? And I looked at what we were learning back there and we were talking about, remember, the night is far spent, the day is at hand, and talk about how we look at the time and all of that. And I thought, how is this teaching us? How is this teaching us to make decisions between more than two good choices? I just kept beating my head against the wall with that. So we'll have, when we come back, we'll have a chance to actually talk about that one. We're going to talk about both of those, as a matter of fact. But now they make perfect sense that this is the way He does it. And so I want to show you what I've been able to see, so it will make sense to you that way too. Okay, I don't want to quit, but I don't have time to do it properly, so I will. Here's what I'll say. Let me end for the third time.
Why
We are going to learn this in a way that we did not learn it when we went through it the first time. I think a better way. I think we'll be able to set the framework for this in a way that now we will see the doctrine much better than we were able to see it the first time through. I'm counting on that.
This is where we all started kind of.
Yeah. So this is really going to be good. This is going to be great. All right, let's have prayer. Father, thank you for your goodness to us. And I say that every time, but I really am mindful of just how good you have been, that you stopped what was happening in Israel's program and gave us a chance to be reconciled to you under grace. Thank you for that. And Lord, we do love you for that. We love you in that way. And I realize there are many ways that we are going to learn to love you and to start thinking about that and integrating it into our prayers with you, talking about how we feel about you and about what you're doing. And as we get ready to move into this next area, I am so glad that we're going to be able to talk about the things that are before us. I cannot adequately express how much comfort these things have given to me, and I want that same thing to be given to this assembly. And we're glad, Lord, for your word that gives us exactly what